You see that? Okay. Was that well? Last year, people wanted again, as Andrei said, more time-saving approaches, more tips and tricks, more customized content, more things that are actually useful to you guys as artists. So that was very valuable feedback to us, and I tried to again input more of it in this year's roadshow. So again, just to repeat, if you have 5 minutes to spare, check back with us. Try to share with us what did you like, what didn't you like, and we will try to tailor-made it for the next year. It's very variable for us. So if you didn't last year, do it this year, please. This is wonderful for us. So yeah, one of these requests was to cut the marketing stuff. And I'm going to do that exactly. So the first thing, I'm starting with the presentation now. The first thing I wanted to mention is that in this year we released, actually in the last couple of months, we released new major service pack 3.3. And since I travel a lot and try to meet with you guys, our customers, I got a lot of feedback, and I saw that some things weren't clear with the new variance-based image sampling. So I put up a small presentation in here, and that's, by the way, information that it's not, how can I say, that's you can almost think of it as information straight out of the kitchen, something that was never clearly written, why we did this, what was our reasoning behind this, and why we did change this as a whole. And to me, that's a really great feature. So I'm going to start with that. It's going to take about, I don't know, about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe. But before that, something's going wrong. Right, so I'm going to explain about that. But before that, I just remember that we have a couple of Revit and Sketchup users. So I just wanted to mention those. We had a request for what's new in Sketchup last year. So I'm going to do that just now. So bear with me. One really quickly thing. I just wanted to mention 5 minutes. And I'm sorry. I just want to mention for the Revit users, I have a small video in here. I'm going to just play it a bit. I'm going to stop. We did. We're absolutely, as you know, we're releasing this pretty soon. I just wanted to mention just a couple of things that you have probably seen this video if you're interested in Revit and theory for Revit. So I just wanted to explain a couple of things that weren't told anywhere, and just give you a bit more insight of what our intention was. So we wanted to integrate it as closely as possible as the interface of Revit. We know that users just want to point and press render, not play around too much with the settings, especially when they want to see their building rather than to tinker around with settings. So as you can see, the first tab here, as it calls, interface built for designers, it's very simplistic. But the first thing that you're going to see is that you just select the view from where you want to render, and these are all the views that you created in Revit. So and then you select quality. Sorry, let's go back a little bit. Yeah, well, you select quality, you select preset of the resolution that you want to render. You get to choose if you would like printer-based resolution or screen-based resolution. And then you can select, is it a regular rendering, is it an RT rendering? We are also planning on support to export into a VRAC, which is able to be rendered on the standalone. As well, the VFB color corrections are there to assist you even more. Some render elements are available as well if you would like to continue your work and adjust it in post. So we do support the Revit materials, the Autodesk library, which gets internally converted into a VRI material at the time when you press render. So you don't have to do anything, you just play around your regular settings, and we take care about this for you. What's even more, however, if you would like to extend more, you can create your own materials using the VR matte material editor, or get material from somewhere else, like Sketchup, Rhino, Max, Maya, whatever. And we have an editor here which allows you to overwrite any existing Revit material with a V-Ray material one, which, as you can see in the next couple of seconds, is going to provide much better shading for the grass here. Watch the ground. Okay. So you don't, in order to use the sun system, you just use the Revit one. It gets internally converted to a V-Ray one, so there is no new interface that you need to learn. It's just we take care about these things for you guys. Obviously, it works with our team. Alternatively, you can use HDRI images, which are very, very popular. You can download them all over the internet, which captures the illumination, and you can use that image to illuminate your scene. This is actually the V-Ray dome light, but it automatically overrides the sun so that you get more natural lighting. Naturally, we support the V-Ray, the Revit IES lights, since V-Ray has a native IES light support internally. Okay, we have support for additional plugins such as the RPC, people trees. They render, again, their materials get converted internally into V-Ray ones, so we don't have to do anything. You just use it as regular point and click. And we have absolutely fully integrated support for the section box. Nothing again to mention, it just works out of the box. So you can get sections. We also have powerful material override, I really did read that, a material support override system, meaning that you can create stylized looks very easy by assigning one material for the opaque stuff and one for the transparent stuff, creating such kind of stylized renders. And finally, but again very, very trendy, very important, support for VR cubic cameras. Currently only the cubic camera is supported, so you should know that, but yeah, it's ready for the Oculus and Gear VR. If you want to have a look at some of our renders, we have a VR set over there with the latest created by Chaos Group, some things from Bertrand Benoit, some things, some very cool stuff. So that's it. If you have any more questions, I'll be here all day ready for you. A bit more exciting thing, we are ready with the release of V-Ray for Sketchup. Almost ready actually. As mentioned, we're going into beta very soon. I just wanted to mention what a major release this is going to be, because we're doing a major major interface overhaul. Let me play this with another viewer, because I don't like this one. It darkens the screen. Sorry about that. Okay. Just scroll up. So we have a major interface overhaul, as you can see. We have added a lot, some new features, some cool stuff. I'm going to briefly run through that. One of the important things I would like to mention here is that we have export to VR scene and render a VR scene. So you can now use the VR scene that standalone supports as an exchange format to get assets, to get different scenes from different applications that V-Ray supports. So you can take any scene from any render, from any content that we support, like Max, Maya, whatever, export it from there and render it here, or vice versa. Okay, we have some developer stuff going in there, and one of the major things is we have again revised some of the controls. The render region now works, which didn't before, so now it's really cool. we have a unified browser, that's the VRay asset browser, and we wanted to, again, integrate it as closely as possible and make it as easy to use as possible. As you can see, we have the material slides, geometry that VRay supports, and some settings. And as you can see in the settings, it's very simple, just one slider with quality, very easy to set up. If you want to have more custom update, more custom settings, these are the quick settings controlling independently the GI, the materials and lighting quality, and the ATL ASIC. We have RT CPU, GPU, both versions are supported. Here we come into the camera settings. Initially you just have the exposure value slider, but if you want a bit more of a control for the depth of field, for example, you can have this one as well. So yeah, just a simple exposure value parameter drives the exposure. We get the custom exposure in a couple of seconds. So yeah, I can now change the f-stop if I want a different bokeh effect. Okay, we have all these presets for the resolutions. So you just, again, select whatever you want and don't think about aspect ratios and whatnot. Now we go to the materials, to the lights. This is essentially a light lister. You can see all the lights currently have been disabled. I just wanted to show that we have GI. If I stop it, you're going to see that we still see something in the reflection environment, and that's because we can override it from here. If I disable it, that goes away. Back to the lights, I'm going to enable the lights on the sunlight now. Again, we're using the native. We have this is essentially built on the VRay 3.3 core, so there is support for HOSEC as well. The new sky model, we have ground albedo to change the color of the horizon and the color that goes from the ground, but I'm going to talk about this a bit later. Obviously all these parameters are working fine. We also have, you control the sun from the SketchUp settings. You can readjust stuff, quite easy. And as you can see, we try to make it as enjoyable as possible. We learned from your feedback. We understood that this is something very, very necessary. So I hope we did something that you're really going to like. Moving on to the other lights. Actually, I'm going to speed this up a little bit. Okay. Maybe I don't need the music. Okay, so if you start changing some parameters, you can see again everything in RT, playing around with the light setup. Obviously, this is a very simple setup, but it's just the idea is just to demonstrate what you can do and how you're going to be working with VRay for SketchUp. So again, these are the options. A bit more faster. Okay, you can rename the lights, you can delete and rearrange the lights in there. Now here we go to this. I would like to just very quickly mention you have a preview window which renders all the time constantly without slowing down the interface too much. Very, very tiny, but you can turn it off if you want. Of course, it's a cool way to visualize all the changes as you're working. You can assign various procedural and bitmap textures as well from the list of the textures that VRay supports. These are the procedural noises, and in this case, for example, I'm changing a little bit the size, the iterations, the fractalness of the noise. Change a little bit, achieving some kind of granite dish effect, some stylized thingy, and yeah, obviously playing around with the settings, having fun. What else? Yeah, all these stuff that are, you can now apply the bump map, not as a layer-based system, but it's integrated in the settings. So yeah, it was easier. We also support displacement and environment overrides. You can override different stuff. These are a bit more technical. I'm just showing them that they exist. If you want to use them, you can do so. It's not our entire idea. Now, if you don't like, I mean, not that if you don't like, but if you don't need that much of a control, I'm going to quickly switch now into the quick settings to the left. You're going to see it in just a couple of seconds, where Here you see you have, I'm going to just stop a little bit. Okay, you have all the most important parameters here. If you want to just think about the colors, you don't even need to expand all the full settings there. You also have presets like metal, glass, plastic, subsurface scatter, emissive materials. All these stuff is just 2 clicks away. And also, if you want to have your own material library, yeah, here I'm demonstrating the subsurface scatter effect. If you want to have, yeah, I'm going to turn down the light so that you can see the effect more natural, and you can see beautiful, juicy statue. If you want to simulate this kind of plastics, again, you're absolutely able to do so. In a couple of seconds, I'm just going to demonstrate the other material browser, and actually this base for presets that we provide a couple of presets here. You can do your own, save them, and of course share and reuse them for later. So in this case I have an amethyst. And as you can see, we have quite a lot of other presets which we are going to ship with VRE for Sketchup so that you can start working right away. But again, the idea of this web browser is for you to make your own palette of objects. Now I'm going to show you a really cool feature. That's the light intensity tool, which allows you to point and click and then start dragging, changing the intensity of a light without even opening the interface, which makes it much more natural to set up light's intensity as you're working with RT. And yeah, finally, I'm just going to show you that I export the VR scene somewhere on the hard drive. Okay, and then I'm just going to open up a new scene so that there is nothing in the scene. I'm just proving my point. And then I can load it up and say render from VR scene file. Select that. VR is going to render with all the settings that I applied earlier, and mainly this copper-based material. Okay, so you can see how many new features, how many extensions that we do support. Obviously, I'm just going to play around a little bit with the color corrections, but that's mostly it. So I hope we're getting somewhere that you would like us to go. But your feedback, as always, is very, very much important to us. We pride ourselves with our user-driven development, so please, if you like it, tell us. If you don't like it, do tell us absolutely. If you tell us, we're going to listen to you. Otherwise, we don't know if we're going in the right direction. Obviously, we have beta testers that we asked, but you know, the really cool part is that you can save this as a LUT file, which can be imported in Photoshop or in other compositing program. So you can keep all the color corrections that you already used here. And the really cool thing is that you can also create this color correction file from another software and load it in the VRE frame buffer. So there is a lot to exchange. So hope you like that. Again, I'm going to move on with the other presentation. Probably I need to extend that really quickly and rerun it. Okay. Okay. So the variance-based image sampler. That was the major new change in VRE 3.3. By the way, how many of you are 3ds Max users? Oh, cool. So you're going to love it. That piece of information is again straight from the developers, straight from Chaos Group, and I can't stress how important this is. So I want you to pay really close attention to that. It's one of the best tips and tricks that I can give you. So in 3.3, that was a minor release. It's not a major next release. It's just 3.3, but it created quite a lot of major change. That was the variant-based adaptive sampling. From here now on, I'm going to just call it VBAs or VBAS. So the other change that we did, we removed lights and material local subdivisions. We improved the progressive image sampling. We implemented these changes, and I'm talking only about the sampling here, and we implemented that in both CPU and GPU. Now let's compare a little bit between the two versions between the two minor versions. Now, there, in 3.2, we have minimum maximum based intensity, and that's very important, intensity-based image sampling. What does this mean? Well, intensity, it means that V-Ray sampled where the intensity, there was a change in intensity. Meaning, if we take 2 pixels, how we first calculate their intensities, and we do that by taking the red, green, and blue channel, combine them together, divided by 3, and that's the intensity. So we do this for the 2 pixels, and then we compare the difference of this value, the intensity. So if this difference is larger than a certain number, and that was the color threshold in the image sampler, if this value difference is larger than this value, then this means to V-Ray that there is some noise there, or there is some detail there, so we need to sample there more, right? I hope that's clear, because that's my basis on what I'm going to move on. So now, with V-Ray 3.3, we changed that. We changed it into a variance-based sampling, and this is not exactly the same. This, you can think of it as a percentage of noise across the whole image. It's not individual intensity comparison anymore. So basically, you can again think of this in an alternative way, is the perceptual noise that we see in the whole image. And V-Ray knows about the whole image. It's aware of the whole noise of the picture. So that was the contrast driven. Now we have visual variance driven anti-aliasing. In V-Ray 3.2 there was less sampling in the darks, because if you think about it, if something is in the shadow, its intensity is about 0 or close to 0, and every every pixel that is in that area, they are all next to each other and they have similar close to 0 values. So to V-Ray this means that there is no detail there, we don't need to sample, and that was kind of optimization. However, some of our users wanted to have more control in post-production, for example, and if they increase the exposure a little bit, even 1 exposure value in post-production, even half a step in post-production, you could see the noise there because you didn't sample that. So that was hard to overcome, and there were some workarounds, but yeah, that was one of the things that we wanted to change in 3.3. So in 3.3 we have more sampling in the darker areas. In 3.2, there is more sampling in the shadow light transitions, because that's where the contrast is, right? As we go from dark to bright, there is vast intensity change, so that's where the sampling goes. In V-Ray 3.3, this is equal. There is no biasing where the sampling goes. In 3.2, that resulted into an uneven noise pattern, because V-Ray sampled more in some areas, making the image cleaner, and sampled less in the other areas, making the image noisier. In V-Ray 3.3, that was changed. Everything is equal. And finally, in 3.2, you had independent control over the lights and materials, which meant that you needed to readjust your all parameters accordingly in order to get clean and fast result. While a lot of our users love this approach because they can fine-tune every setting of V-Ray, most of our users, especially the newcomers, didn't want to tackle all these settings. So this was yet another change that we did in V-Ray 3.3, and you had only one control for everything, maybe 2, but I'm going to explain this in a couple of seconds. And that's the color threshold of the image sampler. Now, what were the pros or the advantages of this new approach? Well, first, to me as an artist, is the best and most important is the easier to set up. You don't have individual subdivisions, you don't have to think about this technical stuff, you just think about color of lights, color of materials, strength of reflection, IR, this kind of stuff. No subdivisions, no anything. It works better in the V-Ray quick settings, which was introduced in V-Ray 3.0, sorry. And it takes away all the guesswork for you. So now, if I increase the reflection subdivisions of the materials, should I increase the subdivisions of this light and whatnot? You don't have to think about this anymore. And the best thing about it, if you don't like it, if you would still want to optimize these settings for those, I would say 30% of you that have this geeky person inside of them and say, I can make it faster, I can squeeze 5% more, you can still do so. There is a checkbox to do that. and a script to revert back to the intensity-based image sampling. So if you want, you can, this is not a force change that we did. We are not forcing you to do anything. We just strongly believe that this is the way to go. But if you don't like it, you don't have to do it. Linear threshold to noise relation. What does it mean? Well, if you increase the noise threshold twice, you're going to see twice as much visual appearance noise, visually noise. Does it make sense? I hope it does. I mean, you know, yeah. So, and if I lower it twice, I'll get twice less noisy picture. Better composing flexibility, I already mentioned that. We have the same noise in darks and brights, and this means that even if I increase or decrease the exposure, I will get the same amount of noise, the same quality. That makes it much better for denoising because of the even noise pattern, and it gives more predictable render times. Meaning, again, that since this is, again, variance-based comparison or image sampling, V-Ray knows about the whole image, the whole picture, and if you increase the quality, or sorry, if you change the slider, the color threshold, say again 2 times larger, if you increase it, if you double its value, you will get 2 times faster rendering, or roughly 2 times. But again, if you make it 4 times larger, you're going to get roughly 4 times faster rendering, and the other way around. So it's very, very much more predictable. I'm going to be absolutely honest with you guys. There are some consequences about this, and if you have dark scenes, you may get slower renderings, and that's pretty much obvious why. I just explained. So if you have a lot of shadows, V-Ray is going to sample there. 3.2 didn't sample there, so you're going to get faster renderings with 3.2. If you don't want this effect, you can also change it. Our experiments and our testers showcase that in most of the scenes there is actually improvement in the speed, but sometimes, once in a while, you may end up with a scene that gets actually rendering slower. The color threshold now has a different meaning. It's not intensity-based, it's a variance-based thingy. The variance actually is a statistical term. It's a little bit more vague. It may have to, it may get some getting used to. So you have to think about it in a different way. By the way, old values are not the same values as these ones that are now that are used now. Okay, so I'm going to just briefly pass through all the subjects. Now, the way to set up V-Ray now is either the one value on the leftmost, the color threshold, or you can also use the V-Ray quick settings, which allows you to set up the GI quality with only one slider. And by default, it's brute force light cache, which I would say it's suitable for 95% of the cases. Again, very rough. Don't take my word for it, but I do use this combination all the time. Maybe if I want some optimization, I may switch to irradiance map instead of brute force, but that's only for stills. 95%, this combination is going to get you sorted out every time. You have anti-aliasing quality, and very, very rarely the shading quality can be adjusted from its default value of 6. Again, in most of the times it works just straight out of the box. You don't have to think about these guys. Just tweak around the sliders. Left, fast and ugly. Right, beautiful, but a bit slower. As a consequence, this checkbox over there in the global DMC, if it's the default state is disabled, it will force all these guys to be grayed out. You can't even change them. There is some information for you to know what sampling is this light going to do, and this material and the brute force, but you can't change them. You don't have to change them. If you want to go back, just enable this checkbox and do your optimization manually. Now, what I meant by linear threshold to noise relation, excuse me. So here at the leftmost you can see I'm using noise threshold of 0.2. You can see the noise. Now I lower it twice and I can see visually twice less noise, 0.05, absolutely clean image, visually twice as less noise. Can you see that? I hope it's better on the projector. But yeah, if you want to compare that, all the pictures are here. You can come back later and examine them closely. Better flexibility in compositing. I have rendered this with the 2 image samplers, increased it twice, zoomed it twice, and compare. Now you can see these have been rendered for exactly the same time, close to the second. And this is with under exposure of 2 exposure value steps. You can pay attention over here. You do see some noise with the old sampler. Here it's very clean. Can you see that? I hope it's visible. I'm going to increase the exposure two times. And again, the visual difference is much obvious now. We see the noise here, there in the depth of field, here in the front reflection. And 2 times more, the same consistency is kept even in the darks. If you have a look in the darks, we get a bit more noise on the left. Better for denoising. That was the image-based, the minimum maximum image-based sampler. The same rendering time I'm going to show with the VAS render. The color threshold, so that I get the same rendering time, had to be 0.012. Now, before the denoising, after the denoising. I don't know if you can see this, but up there in the depth of field, and here a little bit, there is some noise. You can come later and see that as well. There is a little bit of noise, and that's because of the uneven noising pattern. And the denoiser cleaned up most of the image, but the depth of field wasn't that clear. I'm going to switch to the other version. Here, this is pristine clean. The color threshold has much higher value, but the rendering time is the same, as you can see. And because of the even noise pattern, we get much better denoised result. More predictable render times. As you can see, we go from color threshold 0.2 with the old image sampler. If I lower that 2 times, I get 2.5, even more, 2.6 longer render time. If I go 0.05, I get, again, about 2.5, 3 times slower render time. So this is not exactly linear. If I lower this 2 times, I didn't have the place to, I didn't want to place it here, but if I lower this to 0.025, 2 times again, the render time went to 10 minutes, which is 4 times, or 3 or 4 times larger than that. In the other case, it's much more predictable. We get 2 minutes and 42 seconds, about 2.2 times slower, about 7 minutes. Then we get almost 16 minutes, which is again about 2.2 times. 2.2 times. This difference is going to be kept as you change the color threshold. You can rely on the rendering later on. Think about it. If for example, I take a look at that and see, okay, that's almost 16 minutes, and this is 0.005, and the noise, I would like to lower the noise, say, 2 times, and I have 1 hour to render this. I know that I have deadline to meet. Okay, I can trust in VRA that he's going to finish in 32 minutes, about 32, 33 minutes maybe tops, but this is going to be much more predictable and easier to set up. This is very important for render farms, for meeting deadlines, and so on. And finally, that was just the first new addition to VRA 3.3. We have many more, and I'm going to briefly run through most of them. Just let me double check with the time. Okay, have a little bit of time. So yeah, so I'm going to go through some of these guys. If you have any questions or something that you would like to raise your hand, and I can try. Since time is pressing me, I may divert to the end of the session. I'll try to answer everything. And the best thing again, this is free. So let's have a look at the scene. Oops. Why I have Modo. I don't need this one. Okay. All right. So I would like to try and use the workstation in here, so just bear with me while I change the cable, because this is a really powerful computer. Where was that? Okay. All right, we should be good to go. Good. All right, so let's dig in. Yeah, first of all, did you find the variance-based thing useful? Do you think it's going to be useful for you? Yes, no, maybe, okay. All right, cool. If you have, again, any more questions, don't hesitate to contact me. I'll be here. So, I just wanted to mention the new sky model that we introduced in 3.3, and that was the Halsik et al. If I select that, you're going to see that it's located here at the bottom. How many of you have used the new sky model? Okay, just a couple. All right. So the idea of the new sky-based model is that it gives much better saturation in the radiance, in the illumination values that come from the sky texture. It has been based on research. I think the paper was released in 2010 with some modifications later on. So it was based on this paper on SIGGRAPH, and it gives much more natural results. In this case, I'm going to use the RT, and maybe it should have been. Okay, let's do it. All right, can you see this? I'm going to try and zoom out a bit. Okay. All right. So in this case, if I increase the exposure a bit, you're going to see that it's close at dawn. The sun is it's in a very low position. So let's bring this back because I'm going to increase the exposure now by moving the slider of the animation up. So if I go there, I have an animation of the sun. I just want to mention, see the colors that we have. They're much more natural. We get this aura type of reddish effect, which by going slower, we get much nicer transition between the red to sunny sky. So if I go somewhere about here, maybe too much, something like that, I'm going to play around a little bit with the parameters. Now, as I visited some of our customers and walk around, I get frequently a certain question, and which was, how can I adjust the colors of the sky exactly to my liking? You know, we know that we can, for example, I can plug this into a color correction texture and shift over the hue or multiply by some color and get some interesting color. But what if I want to get exact control over what's the color in the hotspot, what the color in the horizon? How can I do that? So I'm going to show you really quickly what you can do in order to achieve that. Now, what I'm going to do is first just have a look at what it looks like, what we can achieve with the color correction node. So I'm going to use this the sky texture, use it as an input, and then use this one as a color correction node, as a background node. So what I'm free here to do is adjust the hue right, which equally shifts all the color space in any direction. But sometimes this is not exactly the case. Of course, I can lower the saturation and so on. But sometimes this is not exactly what you want. This gives you some control, but not overall control. So the way to specifically explicitly set this is first I'm going to create just a standard gradient ramp. And I'm going to use this ramp to remap it based on the intensity of my sky texture. So what I'm going to do, probably most of you know that you can use an image map to drive the ramp. So I'm going to set this to mapped. And this will allow me to plug in any texture map here in the source. And if I use this one as my background, okay, nothing happens. Of course, so there are two things that we need to adjust. First thing that you need to do is, may I remind you that when we're rendering with V-Ray Sun, we always have to use some kind of exposure. V-Ray physical camera most of the times, sometimes, but other types of exposure can be adjusted. This is because the values generated by this the VRsky texture is actually a procedural texture. It generates some colors based on some parameters. One of them is the position of the sun, another is the intensity, and so on and so forth. These colors that these texture outputs are very, very high, because in reality they were measured with actual light meters, and these were the values. And since VRI is physically based render, it tries to mimic the reality as close as possible. So this texture, however, accepts values from 0 to 1. It doesn't accept values of 10,000. So we need to rescale the input values so that they match. We have to normalize them in a way from the very, very high values from the texture sky that generates to the range of 0 to 1. So one way that I usually do, but there are multiple ways to do that, is using output map. Set it, say, to 0.1 or no, sorry, 0.01 or 0.2, something like that, and you can immediately see the result in the output preview. See? So I'm going to normalize it to about 0.1, 0.3. Use that as a source map, and use that, and again, nothing happens. Now, do you know what's going on in here? Well, when we lower the intensity, now the exposure is just killing it off, because the intensity is between 0 and 1 and not the real value. So now we have to bring it back. So what I'm going to do is duplicate that, use it as an input here, and go back. So if this is 0.03, I'm just going to increase it 300 times. The inverse of the other one. Come on. Okay. And maybe the inverse was 30. I'm not good at mathematics. Yeah. All right. So now I have absolute explicit control over my sky. Oops. So now it's black and white, but as soon as I change these colors in here, say I want to start with red at the hotspot here, go through blue, and finish with yellowish. There we go. Totally alien, but it does the job. So I hope you like this thing. This is how you can get absolute freedom in remapping the sky. Obviously, this is not very photorealistic, but it's it gives much more flexible approach. I'm going to use the original value because I want to show you something something else that we introduced, and that was the new aerial perspective fog. Now, I just want to mention how the old fog worked, and that if I include the VR environment fog, everything gets dirty, we don't see anything, and that's because it's a fog shader that encapsulates the whole scene, and its density, so to speak, is driven. The parameters are a little bit misguiding, so I'm just going to explain them a little bit. There is a fog density slot here, which is intended is intended for a texture. You should plug in a texture, black and white texture, with values 0 to 1. Remember, most of the textures in 3ds Max accept values between 0 and 1. So you should plug in here a black and white texture. Ideally, you can plug in a 3D procedural noise, the smoke texture, something that is 3D and generate some patterns. And the effect would be to get this, for example, creeping fog, or these, I can't remember exactly the name, these wisps of fog, that some irregularities in the fog, in the density of the fog. The overall density of the fog, actually, the visibility of the fog, in the fog, is controlled by this parameter, the fog distance. And it means something like, from this distance, actually from the camera, up until this distance, in this case 100, the objects are going to appear twice as transparent. Right? So if I have a light and it goes 100 units away, it's going to be at 50% opacity. If it goes another 100 units away, it's going to be at 25% opacity, and so on and so forth. That's about the explanation of this parameter. This means that if I increase this value, I'm going to see deeper in the fog, right? And this is exponentially, of course. So we have, I have created something like this, maybe a bit lower, too much to my taste. I want it to be a bit more dirty, even more. I just wanted to make, I just want to show some cool tricks. That's why I'm setting it up to be more visible. Now we have fog color. Obviously, this can be set up to any kind of color, and whatever you want to do. But by its nature, this fog currently occludes any lighting. It's visible for all the rays in my scene. Meaning, I'm going to occlude the camera rays, what the camera sees, but also the sun is going to penetrate harder and harder and more difficult into the volume of the fog, and the shadows are going to be disappearing, the lighting of the objects is going to be disappearing the lower they are. So the further they are from a light source. So so this means that we lose intensity. I can disable most of these guys from reflections, refractions, shadows, for example, and now the objects are not going to be dimmed, even the GI. And this is going to optimize this fog in order to be much faster to render. So the only thing that I'm using the fog for is what the camera sees, nothing else. And this requires less calculations. And this is actually what we did with the aerial perspective. However, there are a couple of things that we added to the aerial perspective and made it render even quicker. And I'm going to explain which those things are. In order to explain it, I'll have to turn on back the GI and the shadows, at least. And now, if I check scatter GI, you will see, maybe I can compare that. Okay, so that was the old version without the scatter GI. Can you see? Much darker here in the left area, much brighter in here. It's also not brighter, but also it is bluer. Let me just enable that. Okay. And it's also bluer. And it's bluer because the GI that gets color from the environment, the sky, gets scattered inside this fog. So the blue color with a large intensity is going to be scattered inside of the fog. What I can do to simulate this, and by the way, whatever I plug in inside of my environment, I can plug in a checker, and it's going to be sampled by V-Ray, so some parts of the fog are going to be brighter, some are going to be darker. So whatever texture you have for environment, it is going to be ray traced, sampled. And this requires more calculations. Usually, you would like to have the color of the fog to be consistent because the dominant color of the sky is just one color, maybe another one for the ground. So, you know, you have a blue sky, green ground, or brownish ground, and you're going to want these two colors blended somewhere in the fog, but nothing more. You don't need more detail than that. So what I can do to optimize these things is to say, okay, don't scatter the jet. By the way, if you increase the scatter bounces, you're getting to make it to make this effect into account for more scatters bounces inside of the fog, because V-Ray is a ray tracer, it scatters a lot, it bounces a lot. So you're going to fill up this atmosphere with more and more light from the environment. So the way to optimize this is I'm going to just disable the scatter GI and use this fog emission parameter with a color, some bluish color. Now I changed a lot of things and nothing is actually happening too much. Again, we have to think about intensities. This color here is just in the range between 0 and 1 or 0 and 255, which is way, way, way lower than the actual color of the sky. So in order to fix this, or to compensate for this, I'm going to plug in actually a texture in the fog emission color, and I'm going to use a very simple V-Ray color texture, which allows me to boost up the intensity. I can use also an output map, whatever does the job for you. Here the idea is that I would like to use this color, say, let's make it red to be more visual. Nothing changes quite a lot, but if I go in the multiplier, say 100, did I plug it in? Yeah, maybe I need to. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 100. 1 Let's try a quick restart. Maybe it will work. Okay, let me stop this. And as always, as my trademark is, there we go. I shouldn't have stopped it. Okay. As my trademark, I'm showing you the latest version of V-Ray, so it's not a stable build. I want to show you again the latest thing, so sometimes things may go wrong. So I think we wanted to, we agreed that 30 was about right, not exactly 100. And where is my, okay, let's stop it again. I think I broke something. Really quickly run it once more. Give it a second to load. There we go. Okay. And now, if I start playing around and adjust it to something bluish, it should be updated. Come on. Okay, obviously there is something wrong with this version. Okay, I'm going to use the progressive then. And it's going to compile. I have lots of grass in here, but you get the idea. Whoa. Yeah, there is something wrong. Sorry about this, guys. Let's run it again from the RT. But yeah, but you see now the bluish tint, and that's the way you can do so. It works in the stable. Don't worry. That's a very new thing. There is a very particular reason I wanted to show you this build, but some things may go wrong. But then, as you can see, just for a couple of seconds, this rendered nice and clean because we're not actually tracing anything from the environment. We're just using one single color to boost up the self-illumination of this fog, simulating the effect. Now, this thing does not take into consideration the color of the ground. It just takes into consideration one color, which should be probably the sky. So that's why I'm going to get rid of this whole thingy here. Just get rid of that. And actually, let's create a new one. I'm not going to use the ready-made one. I just wanted to show you how I usually set this up. Okay. Could you please wake up? All right. And there is something wrong in here. You can see that I cheated by making this airplane trail with a plane, not actually a simulation. So yeah, what we did here with this aerial perspective was take away all these settings. As you can see, we have only, now there are 4, but they used to be 3 settings. Just a little bit more control. Just 3, or I should say just 2 basic settings. You don't have to think about any textures, any self-illumination. You just want to think about how high is the aerial atmosphere and what is the visibility range in meters. The final thing that you can, if you want to, is should this affect the environment? And in the latest version, should it affect also the lighting that comes from the sun? So should it occlude the shadows or not? That's what you can do with this effect. It's extremely easy to calculate. It's extremely cheap to calculate. Let's set it up. Say I'm going to lower the visibility. And as you can see, I start tinting the objects, but not the sky. So in this case, I just want, all right, affect the environment rays, please. And it's going to equally tint or affect everything in my scene. Then I'm going to say, all right, so this is way, way too high. I want to simulate that I'm a little bit higher in the atmosphere. Sorry about that. A little bit higher in the atmosphere. So I'm going to lower this. And since my scene currently is at the 0, 0 space, I'm going to say, okay, this fog should be high, let's say 5 meters. And I can see it up there in the distance, just a little bit above my mountains. If I say 10 meters, it gets a little bit higher. In order to demonstrate this more effectively, let's make it very, very thick. 100, yeah, something like that. Now we get this nice, currently we are in the fog, at the very top of the fog, and we see this very nice effect that is actually very natural to get the light from the sun scattered quite a lot, and we see it directly in the lens, so it does something like a lens blur. But if I start lowering that, you can see that I slowly bring back the fog downwards. Okay? So the coolest trick about this is that it is generated by V-Ray from the Sun and Sky system, so it actually gets the proper color from the sky texture. If I change the sky texture, I'm going to change the fog, the color of the fog as well. So I showed you how you can exactly change all of your textures, actually exactly the colors of the texture of the sky by 2 methods at least. So all the changes are going to be affected in the fog as well. But the cooler thing is that it actually plays very well with the ground albedo, because it also looks for the color of the ground albedo. So if I get it red, you see that I get reddish tint coloration from the ground as well. The ground albedo is a parameter that says, okay, my imaginary infinite plane that acts as a ground has this color, and it's going to bounce it back in the atmosphere so that I can see it. Essentially changing the horizon over there and a little bit of the fog. Okay, so enough about this. I'm going to switch quickly to another. I'm not going to show all the settings as the demo scenes. I know that you're tired of all the demonstrations. So what I just wanted to show here is the change of the sampling. Probably you have seen that, but I just wanted to mention it. So for the same render time, again the same scene. Oops. You can see the noise on the left is much more visual. So yeah, the same render time, absolutely 2 different results. I have it here in the history so that you can compare it as well. Where's that? Resolution is killing me. Sorry about that. All right, so that's the rendering with 3.2, and that is 3.3 and 3.2. So you can see the noise distribution is much nicer, and that's about, what's that? 3 minutes and 3 seconds and 3 minutes and 2 seconds. So yeah, to the second, the same rendering time. Okay, we have a lot of other new stuff such as faster probabilistic shading. You just have to enable this checkbox in here. Can you see that in there? Right? So that's in the environment tab. If you set the use probabilistic shading on, you get much faster rendering for volumetrics. These volumetrics have been loaded using the V-Ray volume container, volume grid, which allows for loading external volumetric cache, such as OpenVDB from Houdini, Field3D from FumeFX, Phoenix Aura files, Phoenix Aura files. So you get all exchange much easier from that, and you get to render it much faster. As you can see, almost 2 times faster. Okay. What else? We have much faster rendering of proxies. As you can see, we have quite a lot of proxies in this scene. And here you don't have to do anything. Our developers did what they needed to do. And yeah, that's 3.3. Okay. Again, about 25 to, depending on the scene, you can get up to 40% speed increase. We also, that inherently works, by the way, this works for instances as well. And since ForestPack works in a way with instances and proxies internally, the developers of ForestPack work closely with our developers. That's why you can get much faster rendering speeds out of ForestPack. Which was how much? I didn't see that. But you can see about, in this case, it's about 50% faster, which is awesome news. Speaking again of faster rendering, now very quickly, just I'm enabling here the distributed rendering on both of in both of the cases. In one of the cases, I'm using only the local station on the left. On the other one, I'm using the local workstation and 2 additional render nodes to distribute the light cache. And I'm calculating only the light cache. with the don't render final option enabled, so we don't render the final. And as you can see, if you use more computers now, obviously you're going to finish faster and render faster, earlier. Okay. So, and as you can see, the speed is about, well, not exactly 3 times faster, but it's close to 2.6 times faster. So it's not exactly linear, but very, very much nicer, you know, to not to have just a lone computer sampling this. Another really interesting thing I just want to mention was that. Yeah, I wanted to show a couple of thingies about the clipper. And how are we with the time? Okay. Okay. No, actually, yeah, we do have the mesh clipper option, and I'm going to show that in front of you. Okay. So in this case, I have this cake. I would like to cut it out. Probably if you've seen this video, the way I did it was I prepared a geometry. Actually, I started with a simple box. I don't want to see this anymore. So I started with a simple box. I gave it a lot of subdivisions so that I have some polygons to play around with. I edited it to cut it out, applied some noise, mapped it out because I needed some UVs for the other material. I'm going to explain why. Smoothed it out, noised it even more to get this fine crumbs effect. I added another edit poly to clean out all the necessary junk polygons because I don't need them to clean up the scene. Is this useful for you guys? I mean, do you find it helpful? All right, cool. Okay. And then I just reset the X forms. I moved it around and reset the transformations. Okay, so by doing this, then I created a new. Where's my? Actually, let's create a new one. So go here in the V-Ray settings, I get the V-Ray clipper, create one somewhere in the scene. By default, as you remember, the V-Ray clipper is a planar cutting section tool. Now I'm going to use it as a mesh mode to essentially create a render time boolean. So here at the bottom, there is a mesh mode. I'm going to enable that and say pick mesh, pick it up. Now the clipper became the object itself, because it was replace mesh with clipper, it was on. I can disable that so that I can keep the initial object if I wanted to. But all is not lost. If you want to make some more edits to this object, as you can see, the stack is here as well. It's kept. I intentionally used a large stack so that you can see this, everything that I did. And if you want to, you can also extract it as another node so that you can bring back the geometry, play around with it if you want to, and so on. Okay. So let's render that out and see how it looks. And yay, funnily we do have something pinky clipping through all our objects. So first we clip through the plate, we clip through the jelly and the cake. So I'm going to exclude a couple of things. Actually, I'm going to include only the cake. I think that was the cake. No, that was the other one. Naming, naming, naming. Proper naming is essential to good. So this is the crumbs. Yeah, it should be without that. Okay. And the crumbs also. I should exclude the crumbs. As you can see, I used particles to place around so that I can get this nice crumb distribution. So these are the guys here. I'm going to cut them out as well. Where are the other cake crumbs? Okay, these were the crumbs on the plate. All right. So now I'm clipping almost everything that I want. I'm going to show you, explain why I didn't clip the jelly on the top in just a couple of seconds. That's because I would love to use. I would love to have the material in here. As you know, there is an option that says use objects material, and while it works good. Most of the times, it does project based on the UVs of the other object, of the object that is clipping. If you use the V-Ray clipper as a plane, it's going to project the material, the texture that were on the old material, using the texture as UV, right? It has to get the UVs from somewhere. Now, since I'm using another object to cut with the clipper is I'm going to use the object's own UVs to map the textures that were applied on the original mesh. And for some reason, I kind of don't like that. And also another reason is that I want to show you another way of working with the clipper. And I'm going to say, all right, I have a prepared clipper material. That's it. And it has a bit better distribution, a bit better textures, a bit more coloration on that, make it a bit more juicy. So I'm going to blend it over and use a bump on top so that it gives this, again, fine detail. So I'm going to use this material instead of my own. So what I did was I selected clipper, assigned the material to the clipper, and last, of course, I have to uncheck use object on material. Excuse me, use object on material. Now, as you can see, I changed just a little bit, but you can see the visual change. It's a bit more moist inside because it was just bitten off and so on. You know, these details always help. And finally, because I'm using this custom material on my clipper, I can't use it for clipping of the jelly on top because I already used some other material. So I'm going to create another clipper to cut the geometry of the jelly. Let's create one more and pick the jelly. That. Okay. Exclude, include. Okay, glaze, I believe was that. Okay, and it's a good idea to use the RT to see what's going on. Currently, I haven't positioned it correct, so let's place it something like this, somewhere over there, and I'm going to go to perspective, readjust it so it's somewhere I want it to be. Okay, go back to the camera. It's cutting it out somewhat nicely, but then again, it's using the own clipper material, so let's use the object's own material so that it propagates the jelly on the section as well. And there we go. We have a cutout cake. Yummy. Was this helpful again? Helpful? Okay, cool. I'm glad. That's what I'm here for. All right, so let's stop that. I just wanted to mention, in this case, I can't exactly demonstrate this because we're not always using the clipper for cutting out objects, such this one, but like product photography. But if you have, for example, if you want to cut out a building, that there is some interior lighting conditions, for example, there is a sun outside, you're illuminating the exterior building with a sun, and inside it's very dark. Usually if you go on camera and try to photograph through the window outside, you have to set the exposure awareness of the camera in a certain way, and if you use the same settings so that it doesn't burn out, and if you use the same settings and turn around and shoot inside, everything is going to be way underexposed, very dark, because of the difference of the intensities. So if you do the same cutting section with the clipper, by default the clipper is set to allow the sun rays to go inside of the object, inside of the room, through the object, so that it illuminates nice. But if, for example, you want to depict, I don't know, a regular lighting, interior lighting, which has much less intensity, or a candlelight, something more romantic, I don't know, something that has very, very different lighting condition than the outside, you have two options: either to lower the intensity of the sun, which is not physically accurate, and you don't want to do that exactly, or exclude the clipper from allowing, or actually forbid the clipper to allowing the sun rays to go through. So what you can do this by saying affect lights, which is going to say, all right, here, don't use the lights. Actually, don't use the lights to illuminate the scene, the interior of the object that I'm just cutting out. Obviously, there is no interior in the cake, so I can't demonstrate this, but I just wanted you to know this option. The camera rays only option is going to do the same thing for the reflections inside of the interior. Imagine you have a mirror. If you don't have the camera rays only, this is going to allow the reflections of the mirror to see what's outside. Trees, rivers, sky, whatever. So when you cut out, and if you want to keep the interior conditions intact, you may want to use these options as well. Okay. And I think I have just one more time for just one more feature. And which one should it be? I don't know. We talked about these guys. We have support for the fur and multi-subtexture on the GPU. I'm not going to show these, just the support. Let's have a look at the nice ray traced edges. The edges texture currently in V-Ray, you already know that it produces the bump effect of cutting out the geometry. Smoothing out the edges, the hard edges of the geometry. So what we used it here in order to smooth this low poly, nicely cut out edges here for the coffee, chocolate, and the sides to be smoothed out. But the really cool thing that we improved, or actually our developers improved, was where is that? Where's my edges texture? Coffee bean, chocolate. Was that we turned it into a ray traced one, meaning that it can it accepts more than here it is. So I have edges texture here and edges texture there. Let's just compare. Okay. So if I say don't consider the same objects only, maybe it was the other one. Check, is this the material? Ah, yeah, sorry about that. It's disabled in the, okay, it's disabled in the map slot, there. Okay, so now I'm using this as a texture, and I have, actually, let's start with just one, so that it makes it more clear. Okay, if I use this one as a bump node, it's going to round up the edges here and here as well, because this is where the map is applied. I used the multi-sub map for the two objects so that I have different control. But anyway, this is a bump effect which considers more than one object. Now I'm going to assign a different texture here for these radiuses. For this radiuses here, just wanted to mention that actually these are separate entities. These are not connected. These are just simple objects attached together. And even though that they are different objects in a way, different polygons, since the mode of this texture is ray traced, V-Ray does trace and creates rounded objects between different entities, between different non-connected polygons. You can do so for multiple objects. You don't have to attach them together. It works. I just attached them so that I can use a multi-subtexture and use two different radiuses. As you can see, this one has ID faces of this one has ID faces of 1, and these guys are 2, and I'm using the same texture twice in a multi-subtexture, so one for the smaller pieces, one for the large piece. And the effect is probably, yeah, it's this one. So here I have a smaller radius here and larger radius over there. You can also see even the label is much nicer. So this is without the bump effect. This is with the bump effect. Okay, and I have explicit control over these guys. If you would like to get rid of this effect, actually, not get rid of it, there are just a couple of options I want to mention. These are, so everything goes here from the rounded corners. I can change the radius if I want to, make it much smoother, and obviously since this is a bump effect, it doesn't generate new edges, so if you go way overboard, maybe it's not going to look nice. But there is a consider same objects only checkbox, meaning that if you turn this off and I get two not connected, not attached objects whatsoever, V-Ray is going to blend between the two. This is very useful for example, you have a scenario where you have a glass of water or a bowl of water, and then you want to submerge some object into this glass of water, say, I don't know, a straw. And then, you know, water makes this small edge towards the newly dipped objects. You know what I'm talking about? This is very easy to achieve using this way, because it's going to be generated between multiple objects, between multiple materials. And you also have control, should it be only convex or only concave, or both of them. Okay. And I think I'm running out of time, so just going to play the video. And while it is playing, we talked about all these guys. If you do have some questions, I believe now is the time. Do we have the time to? Yeah, maybe. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Cool. We have time. So yeah, we talked about the new image variant sampler. I think that's if I get to choose that you take one thing away from this presentation with you guys, that's the information from the image sampler. To me, that's very important. We talked about how you can customize your sky and how it works with the optimized effect of the V-Ray perspective, aerial perspective. I also mentioned how you can set up the environment fog in a similar way. We talked about the speed improvements. These are just checkboxes, and here and there sometimes they are not checkboxes. Yeah, I didn't have the time to talk about the stochastic flakes. I'm going to spend that time in the afternoon session. I'm going to talk about a bit more there. Yeah, it's a really cool shading, cool shader. Talked about the implementation of distributed rendering, even in the light cache now. And yeah, while it lasts, I'm going to just wait a little bit. Then we mentioned also, I believe, about the faster proxies. I think it was the next. Oh no, yeah. Oh, I didn't mention these guys. So yeah, you can compare the render settings between different renders, and you can also load the color corrections between different already saved renders in the history, which makes it really, really nice for, for fine tuning. One other option that I forgot to mention is that, again, but I showed that in SketchUp, you can export a LUT file, and you can load it later on in Photoshop, in Nuke, in After Effects, in Premiere, and also you can export LUT files from these applications and load them in the V-Ray frame buffer, which makes a more consistent workflow. We get the mode subtexture that I just showed, but working in the GPU. The fur, by the way, the fur got a new parameter, the V-Ray fur, that was the curl. It allows to curl different hairs, and it has a texture support. The faster proxies and faster forest pack, they're inherently the same feature. Well, not exactly the same, but they're relying on the same improvements that we did for the core of V-Ray. And and I believe, yeah, that's the improved V-Ray edges texture with the ray traced corners. I briefly mentioned how you can do the blending between different materials. Yeah, again, for example, puddle water or liquid metal or something, I don't know. I showed you a little bit more detail how we did the scene with the different approaches here, with the different geometry, and how you can utilize all of the functionality of the V-Ray Clipper. By the way, since the V-Ray Clipper is a shading effect, you can get seamless animations, and not seamless, but flicker-free animations. This is not, for example, a cutout and cap holes of 3ds Max modifier combination. It does not modify the geometry. It does the effect at render time, and you can get you get perfect results at render time. And yeah, one last thing I wanted just to tease you guys, but I don't think I have this one, so maybe I'll leave it for the afternoon session, and I can't show it now, but you can expect, you can expect a new service pack upcoming from us again, which is going to include the support for 3ds Max 2017. I know that this is a question that some of you are asking, and there is a really cool thing that's coming up in this service pack, and that's the V-Ray denoiser, which is going to be used to reduce the noise after the rendering has taken place for just a fraction of the time. It's going to be implemented as a render element, which you just add here. I can show you just a little bit about that, but you are not going to tell anyone, right? And okay, this is it. It's the V-Ray denoiser. Can you all see that? And it's just it gives you the interface to play around with the denoising. At render time, it's going to generate a lot of render elements that are needed for denoising, such as point position pass, normals position pass, normals pass, and some other stuff that are needed for denoising. These are needed because V-Ray has to know where there is fine detail and which surfaces are flat, which is a texture detail, so that it doesn't get denoised for some reason, and just denoise the noise. And that was interesting in a sentence by itself. It has, should I generate only the render elements? Should I replace the RGB with the denoised result? Or you can also extract the denoised version as a separate render element, not overwriting the original RGB. There is a single pass denoise, or denoise the render elements separately, so that if you want to combine them in post, you're going to have the render elements denoised every single pass separately, and then you get the denoised picture at the end. And you have you have presets for mild, strong, the default, or a custom preset that allows you to play around with the radius of the denoising if you want to. Also, support for the GPU is going to be implemented, so that means that if you have a cool graphics card, it's going to do the denoising process on the GPU in just a couple of seconds. And you have the update button, which is going to do all these things for you. Alternatively, there is going to be a standalone tool for the denoising, which is going to be used in animations, so that you can denoise animations as well. Since this is just a frame buffer, it doesn't know that there is a frame after or before that, so you can't denoise animations in that. That's why we're going to provide a standalone tool. Okay, so that was just a sneak peek for the upcoming service pack, again, as always, for free, which is, again, very nice to have. Do you have any questions? No? Okay, that's great. Really? So many things and no questions. All right, I'm glad. That means that either everything was clear, or I should be totally embarrassed and go home. I will be here. Thanks for your time. If you have any questions, I'll be over there. Thanks.